Hello, everybody. Hello, Anchorage friends and others who may be watching. Welcome to Tell George Live, a platform dedicated to keeping us connected and sharing reliable information during this time of physical distancing. My name is George Martinez, and I am a candidate for mayor for the great city of Anchorage in 2021. Visitors and viewers, guests on this program are their own, and attendance on our program does not reflect an endorsement of my campaign. Once again, this platform is about connecting reliable information and keeping us connected, because I know that connections keep us safe, strong, and prosperous. We have a phenomenal conversation tonight. We're going to get right into it really early. We're going to talk about food system security and urban farming with some phenomenal guests on the subject. And then we're also going to have a special family visitation from the David family, who did a research project recently highlighted in ADN. So stay tuned for that. But as always, and for more information, you can visit george2021.com for more information about the campaign. As we move right along, as we always begin the program with a moment of silence and a land acknowledgement. I want to recognize a moment of silence and reflection for the folks who have lost their lives, battling for their lives, know folks who are recovering and are still sick from the virus during this time. Thank you. And I also want to give acknowledgement that I am broadcasting this episode from East Anchorage on traditional Dena'ina Athabascan land. And I recognize that my home is on that land of the ancestral folks whose stewardship once was and remains today. And so wherever you are in Anchorage, as you reflect on where you are today, think about the ancestral land and all across Alaska. And I also encourage others who may be watching from distant places to do the same, to think about the land and the ancestral folks who are on the land that you may happen to be on today. And let's go bring right into with my colleague and my coordinator, Jen Motika. Hello, Jen. How are you?
Good. Good evening, everyone. Doing great. Enjoyed another beautiful day out in the sunshine.
Very beautiful day.
Yeah.
If people had to work, if you got a chance to get outside, if you hadn't, it's still pretty nice out. We have the long days, so that's happening for us, and it really is nice. And you have some plants. I know we're going to talk about them later, but let's just see. You brought some show and tell for us.
I did. I brought a little show and tell. They're just celery stalks. We eat a lot of celery. We juice celery. It's super healthy for you. And through this whole thing, we've really become aware of our waste production, and limiting that and making sure we're eating all our fresh fruits, trying not to waste. So we had all these stalks and I'm like, what should we do with them? And somebody said you can regrow them. So we started regrowing them, and hopefully some of our guests can kind of give me that next step,
Right.
Now I've got them sprouting. Now what? Now what do I do to keep them growing so that we have our own celery? Yeah.
Absolutely. And, and just to give folks an insight of what our conversation is going to be, we're going to talk around a critical issue to our preparation. And so we're going to come right up. But before we shift to that, I had one more thing to ask you about, because you posted some phenomenal photos. You were celebrating a graduation, virtual, right? Weren't you involved?
Prom.
The
Yeah,
prom.
prom.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Tell us a
yeah.
little bit about that. It looked so much fun,
Oh,
and it was a lot of fun with the family. Yes.
yes, yeah. So, KGOT, my friend Casey Bieber,
Shout out to Casey, and
he's
his wife was with us.
yes, he had posted about KGOT doing a virtual prom, and I thought, what a cool concept. And obviously I'm way over that age and my kids are still way under that age, but I thought, it'd be really fun to do something different. On Fridays we always try and find a local business to support, so I contacted Alaska Coastal Catering, and she put together this amazing meal. And then we all got dressed up because my usual attire has been like sweats, and maybe my hair's just up in a loose ponytail or mom bun or something. So it was nice to actually get all dressed up. We took some prom photos, had a great meal, did some dancing. So yeah, it was really fun to switch it up. And I do event planning, so I haven't had anything to plan in a few months. So it was kind of scratching that itch a little bit.
Absolutely. And shout out to all of the local artists that performed in the food bank fundraiser drive, which is a phenomenal segue into our first guest. And so I'm really excited to bring Jodie Anderson on. And welcome, Jodie. And we apologize for any technical difficulties to folks that are out there. Stick with us. But hey, Jodie, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks so much, George. This is great. Hey, Jen.
Hi.
Excellent.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Let me just put a title. So Jodie Anderson is the Matanuska Experiment Farm and Extension Center Director. But can you tell us a little bit about just who you are and what that means, so that when we get into our conversation, folks who are tuning in now and who will listen to the rebroadcast get a sense of the background that you bring to the subject?
Sure, absolutely. So I work for UAF. The farm itself is a 920-acre farm here in Palmer, and I've been involved in agricultural research in Alaska since I first showed up here in 2003, and I am a soil scientist and have worked throughout the state on several different research projects, but also a lot with home gardeners and home food producers, and some of our smaller scale farmers in the state. So I've been able to, very luckily, thankfully, been able to get around the state and see some of the absolutely amazing things that people are growing, that people are producing, and that people are storing for their own food. And it's fantastic. It's really, it's been really just a powerful journey for me. And now, as the director of the experiment station, I'm also there with the Cooperative Extension Service. And so, we're part of UAF down here in Palmer, and so many people are confused, but UAA is just down the street. But the reality is that UAF is the land grant institution for the state of Alaska. And the mission of a land grant university is to do research, to give that research to the people, and to support, the betterment of your stakeholders, which is everyone who lives in the state. So our responsibility is to basically always work to make sure that Alaskans have better lives.
Phenomenal. And that's a great deal of credibility. I want to invite any of our watchers who are tuning in on Facebook Live to send us questions, send us your comments and your thoughts. And I want to thank Deshanna, who's watching with us, Deshanna York, and everyone else who's tuning in, Tony April. But thank you, Deshanna, because first of all, you connected us to Jodie, and you connected me to Jodie. But then let us segue into this conversation, Jodie, right? I had a chance when I was a special assistant for the mayor here in Anchorage. We were looking at food security. And one of the things we did was also work with cities of service and put out some mini food security grants through and did some research and door-to-door surveying around food system security. We called it food security, but you've already reformed me. We'll explain that to folk as we move along. But then I got a chance to go out to the farm, and explore the acreage and really start thinking about what food means to us, especially considering that we are highly insecure when it comes to our own food supply. And so let's just talk a little bit about, so we can give people a snapshot of what our food security situation is today, and how fragile it may be. So people can come onto the page with us, and then we'll walk them through some steps.
Absolutely, yeah. So the statistic the data that really flows around the most with regards to food security and food system work in Alaska is that anywhere throughout the state of Alaska, it's estimated between 94 and 98% of our food is imported. And so what that means is that we're looking at a very low percentage of food coming from just us, from here internally. And we're highly dependent on the outside food systems to funnel their way, to move their way into Alaska. That's predominantly done through barging, but certainly it can be done through shipping, cargo trucks, flights a little bit. They can certainly move food, but really it's the barges that bring most of the food up. But that's a huge reliance from outside.
Right. So just thinking of that percentage that you talked about, the importance of the port, just dealing with what we currently are dealing with. How important is the port, just so folks get a sense of the volume and if something happened, what that means, right? The trickle effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great question. It's super critical. The port is that location statewide that the food comes to first. Even if it's going up to, if it's being barged, it's going to land at the port of Anchorage, and then even, then distributed throughout the state. So it is critical. I mean, if you're looking at we'll just say on average 95% of our food comes in, and the vast majority of that comes in on boat, on ships, on barges, and the port's where it comes. So,
we're dealing with almost 80%. Is it about that 80%?
I would guess. I'm not sure the numbers at the port, but I do know that it's the vast majority of it. Yes.
Yeah, it's about that. It's very high indeed.
Mm-hmm. Very, very high. And then the statistics say that we've got we, meaning kind of the Muni, has approximately 3 days worth of food on the shelves as we are right now. If everything stopped today, we'd have about 3 days worth.
Right, and just to give some clarity to folks who are listening, we have 2 days where the barges come in with all the stuff. So we haven't had during this period any pause or a ripple in that operation at all. So when the ripple locally was when people panicked early on, when there was a panic buy because it disrupted the normal demand and the normal rhythm of that, right? But just wanted to be clear with folks. Let's. Okay, so Jodie, how important is local food security, and how possible is it? I mean, because I want to get past this idea that food security is just about like the certain people, or there's these stereotypes with who this really is important. And I think the way to describe that is when you educated me on why we should be thinking about food system security versus just simply food security. Can you walk me through and walk us through that so that we can bring people up to where the need is, and then talk about the local possibilities?
Yeah, sure. So the term food security, unfortunately, has been kind of thrown about, and it's a heavy term. It's super heavy, and it's really vague, unfortunately. So when you talk to even just the three of us here right now, and then everyone on Facebook, if we were to ask them each, what is food security?
Right.
They would have probably pretty different answers. And then the real important question is, what is your role in food security? Like, where do you fit in that story? And again, depending on where someone is, they have a very different answer to that question as well. And there are many people, especially urban situations, they don't even see that they're part of food security. They go to the store, if it's there, they buy it, and I'm good. Whereas take that same question of what is food security and take it out off the road system, take it to a community and ask someone in a community, what does food security mean to you? And food security could mean making sure that there's enough food that we feed the elders and then the community gets fed. Making sure that the freezer has enough power to run so that we don't thaw out all of the stuff that we caught and hunted and gathered all during the fall time to carry us through the winter. Food security is unfortunately has connected to a really political nature, unfortunately. And so really the direction that we're trying to steer people in is talking about food systems. And food system is really, it's a cycle, right? I mean, it's a system, it's a true system. So there's production of food in that system. And then there's, marketing and distribution of that food. And then there's, there's consumption, there's waste, as mentioned earlier about, wow, we're here at home and we're noticing we're producing so much more waste, or we're producing waste. What do we do? How can we do this better? And so all of these things are part of that food system. And if you frame this conversation as a food system discussion, nobody can pull themselves out of that talk. No one could just say, well, I just go to Fred Meyer and I buy my food, and if it's there, I'm good. There's still more to it, right? They can see how they're part of that cycle because of all of the pieces of that puzzle and not just that one little thing. So I really like talking about it as a food system concept because it's more inclusive, it's more holistic, and it represents not just what's happening, nationally or globally, and we're looking at it so big. How do we fit in? This is right here at home. This is like around the table. We're noticing things. We're connected to things, and then that ripple effect can work its way out.
That's right. And we can, and because of the ecosystem and a system approach, we could think about all of the various stakeholders on the continuum and how they can get an opportunity to plug in, like our young people and our children. And one of the things that we did with that program with Cities of Service and the administration was make sure that we helped to work on the curriculum at Mountain View Elementary and some of the other schools. And there's even some raised gardening happening locally, right? Yes. In Anchorage, right?
Right.
So I got some questions because, and before we got some of these questions where there's some suggestions and some great questions, but I want to give us also a picture of the opportunity that we have. Because this is where you really live in the opportunity phase, like what we can do, which is why I'm excited with your energy and the expertise you bring. And the cooperative extension, just shout out to the cooperative extension.
Oh man. I mean, cooperative extension is that connection, right? I mean, that's that piece that we're taking the research and we're bringing it to the people who don't read research, right? I mean, that's what the Cooperative Extension Service is all about, breaking the research down and getting it out to the public. That outreach component of the university. It's the premise of Cooperative Extension when it started was to be the middleman between the ivory tower and the everyday, right? And to be that segue, to be that connector. And that's what our Cooperative Extension does here in the state. I mean, the publications that are available online for free, I mean, you can figure out how to be, what to do with that celery, right? And all the different things that you can do to make your lives better based on research. And that's critical. It's not, I don't know, I tried this thing and it worked.
Right.
It's actually research based. And
That's right.
that's what cooperative extension brings to this picture. And it's huge.
That's right.
But, what we can do, I mean, Alaska has the potential. I mean,
Well, let me show this graphic. You sent me a phenomenal graphic. Let me pull that up and let's talk about that. This is the Did You Know graphic, and so
this is it.
Right. This is a great one, and we'll just read it for folk. In order to feed all Alaskans, we need 4,700 acres of potatoes, 200 acres of carrots, 200 acres of cabbage, and 600 acres of lettuce. So break that down. What does that actually mean to feed all Alaskans? And then what are our ecosystem challenges now to be able to get to a place where we actually can start to move the percentage needle a little bit?
Sure. So what that means, what those numbers mean, and thanks to the Ken Meter report, that you can find that report that has these numbers at the Alaska Food Policy Council website. Also, that graphic is from Alaska Farmland Trust, and
Excellent.
so if you don't have farmland, you can't grow food, right? And my favorite saying that they have is, "You can't eat a subdivision," which is that's straight up truth. I mean, that's all there is to it. The idea of those numbers, right? Of those really small numbers. I mean, if you added all of those up, it's still less than many farms in the lower 48. I mean, even all total, that's that.
Yeah, it's a 6. It's 8. I mean, less than 8. It was not 10,000 acres. Like, so even if I round it up substantially, right? Shocking.
I was shocked by that number. Yeah.
Right. How low it is, right,
yes.
Jen? Like,
yes,
so
absolutely.
Low.
Our family has a farm in Michigan. It's about 1,000 acres, and it's a teeny tiny little farm.
Yes.
And so when I saw that number, I instantly was like, wow. I mean, that's so small, especially in such a huge state. It's
absolutely.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is that it's doable. It could happen, except, and this is the problem. And George, I think this is where we're going with this conversation, is that cycle that we're talking about, that food system.
Yeah.
In that food system, you've got production. We might be able to do that. We got to encourage younger farmers to come forward. We've got to have farmland to put those young farmers on, and education. There's a lot of things that need to happen, but it could happen, right? And so we can move ourselves in that direction. In addition to that, it's processing, it's storage, and it's distribution.
Right.
It's one thing to grow all of the cabbages that Alaska possibly needs in one farmer's field. The problem is that how are you going to get all of that cabbage to the rest of the state?
Right.
And it's bigger than, a couple trucks moving it around the state. And so it's that processing component, it's that distribution component. It's that infrastructure that if we were to start working on that, farmers would start saying, farmers aren't going to plant if they're not going to sell, right? And if a farmer knows that there's demand for it, we've shown that. Alaska Grown, the $5 challenge. I mean, we know it's out there. The problem is that if you can't get it to everyone, if you can't get it out and sold, if you don't have markets, if you don't have a venue to sell it, so what? Right. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, we could grow that food, which is awesome. And there are many of us who are working in that direction, but there has to be all these other components. That cycle has to be whole. Right. As we ramp up production, then we have to ramp up, processing. We have to ramp up distribution. Right. We have to ramp up marketing. We have to ramp up consumption
and storage capacity. We have to deal
with waste.
That's right, and storage capacity. And so so when we think of Anchorage specifically, and we think of what we have potentially in an urban farming setting meets a regional perspective then we really start to understand what we potentially need to do in terms of infrastructure to be able to get into a more food system secure position in preparation for whatever comes our way, because it always comes our way.
It's always there.
We got so Kristi Wood's going to come on soon, but we got a lot of questions and a lot of great suggestions, and I really love this one. Terry, love to see the alleyways turn to garden parks, safer places, put people to work. And Terry is an organizer with a lot of our street and unhoused community members. And so I really appreciate that, because I think that there's common ground around pathways of dignity and purpose, and what this particular type of movement could represent for us as well. So thank you, Terry, for highlighting that. Let me pull up I showed before Cal Williams, who we had last week, started his garden today. So this is a thing here.
Yeah.
Here's a total movement. We love
happening.
this. And to a point that Terry also pointed out, we could plant, and there's a lot of opportunity to grow local foods that are indigenous as well in terms of nutrition, and work that up too. And here's a really good point. Thank you, Jackie, for checking in. How can we connect with Anchor Gardens and Yardacopia to ramp up urban gardens this summer? And so that's one. We could pull that out. And then also just hydroponics in every home, no reliance. So some other opportunities. Thank you. I think that's a cousin. And here we just have a shout out from Deshanna. But let's go to collaboration, because when Kristi Wood comes on, Kristi Wood is a urban farmer, and her family is from the east side of Anchorage. That's where they are now. They're neighbors relative to me, and phenomenal, inspirational people. And but they are part of this question here. All of these different groups that are growing. Jen, you've seen these online?
Yeah. We do some bucket planting out in our neighborhood, out in our yard, and so I use them as resources. How do I transplant my celery plants? There's some good go-to tips with both those groups. Yeah.
So Jodie, what kind of, do you have a suggestion on how folks can stay connected or work together? But I'm going to bring Kristi in on that too when we make that transition. So let's bring Kristi in about now. I think that's a good time, and let's see how that signal works. We'll get it queued up, and we're pushing the limits of our air. Hello. Hi, Kristi.
Hi.
Excellent. Yes, great. We're just having a phenomenal conversation. We've really moved from a large picture of getting a snapshot of what food system security looks like, what our opportunities to grow look like. And now the conversation started to get to really this practical space. And we've started seeing comments around, the urban farming, the urban gardening, and one particular comment that we just had from Jackie. Jackie,
George,
about how we can
no
connect.
audio. I can't hear you.
Oh, no.
But hopefully you can see our awesome deck garden that's behind me here.
You go ahead and just explain. Let me post some photos, and we're going to try to do this in real time. So let's see if we could just play along. And
nice. Those are beautiful low tunnels. Oh,
these are from Kristi's garden.
Wow.
Those are nice apples.
They are. I'm going to head inside and see if I get better Wi-Fi signal in there.
Oh man, look at that big old salad.
Yes, absolutely. And when I saw this photo, the beautiful colors, the richness. Talk about the wealth of nutrition.
Absolutely.
And to your point, this is what she and her family does. So just consider the relationship that her children have to their food system, and what that means to their potential lifelong wellness journey.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Really important. So Kristi said she's going to check her signal and get a little closer to the Wi-Fi. We'll bring her back on. And so let me share with you. This is my East Side 5 raised beds. We just started working them, and I'm doing some things. I'm going to leave off what I'm doing so I'll save the what are you doing, George, for a DM, the direct message. Like we'll leave that off. But we have we also have a greenhouse on our home, and a lot of folks on our side of town are planting and are growing and getting the kids involved, and that's really cool in some ways. Here you got another comment. Exactly, vertical gardens and rooftops. So before Kristi comes on, how can we think about acreage in Anchorage? Right, acreage in Anchorage.
That's right.
And some unique ways to think about the urban farming and the footprint we could get up to, and some concepts around that. I think that's a real good thing. And then we'll bring Kristi on as you kind of get into that a little bit.
There you go. Yep. Oh, there she is. Can you hear us, Kristi? Oh,
a little bit better. Thank you.
Good.
Okay, cool. We just asked a quick question. Jodie, want to just hit on that question, and then we'll see if Kristi's signal times up, and then we'll get into our conversation with Kristi. Thank you, Kristi.
So I know that at one point I was working with Covenant House, and they were trying to get a hydroponic unit or even just starting garden units out behind. I know that space is an issue, sort of, in Anchorage, but then there's a lot of open space too. There's a lot of opportunities for that. And, as long as the soil is clean, and you can work it. I mean, look what, the Methodist Church on 15th did. And I mean, just an amazing garden that's happened there, where nobody really thought to put a garden before.
That's right.
If we like Yardacopia kind of is trying to do, if we kind of look at what a yard is supposed to be and shift gears away from it and actually put food in our front yards instead of having to mow our front yards, like turn it into something functional instead of something that demands time and energy and money, and fossil fuels most of the time. If we could shift away and actually using our front yards in Anchorage, I mean, imagine the food that could be grown across Anchorage that isn't, that we don't have to worry about, rooftops. There's some engineering things there. Rooftop gardens are heavy. That's right. Heavy things. And so, but certainly if a building can handle it, go for it. I mean, do it. I mean, but just window boxes and here in Palmer, we have Grow Palmer, and it's a walkable food trail so that anybody can walk through and pick food at any point. And they're concrete containers. Right. I mean, it's simple, but it's a really cool thing. And so it doesn't have to be acres. It doesn't have to look like traditional ag. It can be very simple, it can be very small, and you can get a lot out of it.
That is phenomenal, and it's a great transition because I want to just highlight for folks as well, as we talk about with the local farming family, Kristi Wood and her family. Anchorage is uniquely positioned as a municipality. We are like designated federally often as rural municipality. So we have a unique opportunity with respect to ag support for initiatives that we're otherwise working on. And shout out to the Anchorage Community Land Trust for turning essentially a brownfield into a growing, working farm, right?
Amazing farm. Yes.
Amazing work. And so, Kristi, can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Excellent. Can you tell us, you heard what we were just talking about with respect to the size that we need to be able to make a difference. Tell us a little bit about your journey. So, because you could ground it as a family for us, where you are in Anchorage, when you started doing what you're doing, and where you have gotten to with respect to owning your food security as best as possible.
Sure. So I live in NECC Valley with my family, and it's a small lot. I think it's 5,500 square feet. And we've been growing food for about 20 years. And we started literally when we had no money. We bought the house and we literally spent every dollar we had on the house. A friend of ours brought us a beautiful head of lettuce from a garden down the street, and it tasted so great. And we realized a packet of seeds costs a couple dollars. There's dozens of seeds in there, and you can grow your own food right in your yard. And 20 years later, I have become a dedicated locavore. So most of the food I eat comes from the state of Alaska. And most of that comes from my backyard or my community garden plot. And it's just become a family activity. We do organic permaculture style gardening. You can see some of my starts behind me here. These will transition into the greens or into our yard. And eating food that I grow has just become part of my culture, just part of my way of life.
That's right. That's right. People are inspired by that, and but I also know a lot of people are nervous, and those first steps, and they really think that there's that you have to be an expert to get in on this. And so part of what we've been also focused on is, I would say, democratizing and really bringing and opening the opportunity for more people to get connected. And so what I did before was show some of your products, but you also know that there are some groups in Anchorage, Kristi, that are doing some things that are helping to connect and grow our community. And you sent a message out a few weeks ago around Victory Gardens. Can you describe some of what the local kind of urgency is and where some of that movement is happening?
Yeah, there's a new movement that I'm very excited about called Anchor Gardens. It is kind of reminiscent of the Victory Gardens that America started back during the World Wars, when we were growing most of our own food ourselves for household. So Anchor Gardens is a Facebook page that connects people who want to garden with people who know a lot about gardening. And it's a good source for tips, tips on where to get supply, get started gardening. So it's a Facebook page called Anchor Gardens. It's kind of based at the neighborhood level. So my husband and I are mentors. There's other people who are mentors in each neighborhood, kind of standing by to talk with you about gardens, give you some tips. Maybe we have extra seedlings, maybe we have extra pots, extra gardening supplies. We want to help see our neighbors succeed with their own food.
And that's what community is all about. But you could also identify homes who are connected to that with, like, the little organic grassroots signage, right? People are making little posts and little wooden signs and such. We noticed in our neighborhood in the North Cheney area, we definitely have a lot of growers here, and we have members of the Anchor Gardens right up on our block. But Deshanna York just posted, and I think you answered that at the same time. How can folks get involved with the Anchor Garden movement?
Sure. Well, they're on Facebook, and I think, like you've noticed, signs going up in neighborhoods that tell people that, hey, this is a household of mentors. Come knock on our door or text us or whatever, and we're there for you. And Yardacopia, yardacopia.org is another great resource that connects people that have gardening space but don't want to garden themselves with other people who do want to garden but don't have their own space. So it kind of bridges that gap to help make gardening accessible to people who might not have, their own yard that they can garden in. And, I will say that there's 3 tips that I give everybody. The first is to start small, because it's really easy with the garden to bite off more you can chew and maybe get in over your head and then get discouraged. And that's very unfortunate. Yeah, start small. The second tip would be to grow what grows well in Alaska.
Yes.
We all those full big heirloom tomatoes. But those heirloom tomatoes, they're hard, right? And so don't start with something that might challenging like corn or tomatoes. I have farmers at the farmers market for the things that are hard for me to do. And then the third tip is grow what you want to eat. Kale is awesome, grows there. I eat it for breakfast, but a lot of people don't feel the same way. So you know what? If you don't want kale, don't grow kale. Grow the things that you know that you're going to be excited about eating.
That's right.
That is really good and grounding advice. And yeah, so we got a couple of things here: rhubarb and red Russian kale.
Mm-hmm.
Zephyr, hey, hello. Potatoes.
Snap peas. We've had a lot of success with snap peas. I mean, jalapenos. Yep. Yeah.
What else? What other things are?
I had a bumper crop of. I had bumper crops from the greenhouse last year, so I canned them all up with Mexican carrots and garlic and jalapenos. Fantastic. You can crack open that jar in the middle of winter and have this tasty experience in February that reminds you of your garden.
Yeah, love that. Love it.
And let's talk a little bit, Kristi, about just the community gardens, because one of the resources that you shared that I just posted on there, we had the yardacopia.org website for a group that wants to connect people who want to garden with people who have yards available for gardening. Then we have Anchor Gardens, the new Facebook group connecting gardeners on a neighborhood level, reminiscent of the post-war victory gardens. And then you also gave us the Parks and Rec around the community gardens, garden plots where it could be rented from the city for a nominal fee, water's provided. Tell us a little bit about the community gardens and the opportunity that we have there. And then what your either vision or what you're working on. I know you're working on some new things with respect to more projects on the east side. So give us a sense of what that looks like as well.
Sure. Community gardens are a fantastic resource. You can rent a plot from Anchorage Parks and Rec. It's a small fee. It's like $30, $35 a season. Unfortunately, we don't have enough community garden plots to meet demand. You really need to be there in person. Some sign-up season opens, and they usually run out by the end of the afternoon. So I would really like to see more community gardens being in. And that is one of the projects I'm working on at Muldoon and DeBar, the new Chance-New Muldoon Park. Part of phase 2 will have a community food forest. Yep. Chance-New Muldoon, new community food forest, and a new community garden. And the food forest will be open to the public, a variety of Alaska-grown fruits and maybe some perennial herb, things like that. And then the new community garden there will be just like the other community gardens in the system. They're rentable for a small fee. Water is provided, and you can grow as much food as you'd like in your plot.
And so we got one last question. It's time for one more. And let me pull this up here. What does anyone know this? What's the status of the farmers market? And what can we expect? Yeah, there you go, Jodie.
So the farmers markets are open.
Okay.
I mean, South Anchorage is opening, I believe, on the 9th. Midtown is too. The markets are making the changes that need to be made for safety of their vendors, for the safety of the participants, because we want people to come to the market. We want people to feel safe at the market, and our farmers are growing, right? I mean, if farmers didn't just sit there and stop and wonder what to do, food is happening, right? We're growing food, and the farmers need to and want to get that food out. And so markets are it's really exciting that we've had a lot of help. The Alaska Farmers Market Association has had a lot of help through the DEC, and that farmers markets are deemed essential. So
Great.
they'll look different than they have in the past, but the whole concept of getting the products to the people in an open air setting it's going to happen. So just pay attention, follow, your market that you go to on Facebook. Talk to some of the vendors that personally, see if they're going to show up. Some vendors are switching over to different methodologies of selling this year, because markets, it was a tough call, but markets are good. They're open. Have at it.
Excellent. Great question. Great information. What a great discussion with you all. We just remind folks that we will share this information outward. We encourage people to, when this is done, this is also a live recording. So, this is also recorded, so people can share this and continue to get that information. I will continue to promote it. But I just want to highlight a couple of things with respect to what we are essentially talking about in this reset and this rebuild moment for Anchorage, where we have an opportunity to think about this issue through a lens of preparedness, which we are uniquely on the edge of regularly, enough to know the seriousness of what preparedness means and how we have to think about resiliency with respect to our food system security. So I think there's all sorts of ideas on the table. I think this is about opening the conversation, bringing some information for people, and reminding them that there are resources out there: Yardacopia, Anchor Gardens, Cooperative Extension, and others.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Kristi, for joining. I live not so far. I'm going to take a ride. I would love to come visit your plot. And NUC, I roll masked up. So #mask up. And so we'll be safe. And I look forward to working with you on the east side in the Chancellor Park, one of my family's favorite. And thank you, Jodie, for the work you do. I look forward to continue to talk with you around policy and ways that we as a city could be in a position to secure ag dollars and potentially new ways that we have left off the table in the past. Thank you guys.
Great.
Thank you guys very much for your time and your expertise and your commitment to our communities.
Jen, thank you. And George, thank you too for this great platform. And Tuesday is Alaska Ag Day.
That's right. Tuesday's Alaska Ag Day. What a great timing and reminder. And we'll post more information about that too. I know there's some seminars and some information that's out there that's happening on that day. Thank you, everybody. And phenomenal. Let's see. Conversation. Woo, Jen, that was awesome.
It is. And I think it's something that people are vaguely aware about, but the conversations aren't necessarily happening as far as what can we do as individuals, in our household. Maybe we're not, like Kristi said, she's not producing everything, but she's producing a lot. And like that beautiful picture of all that food, the vegetables,
phenomenal.
The fruits, and it really does taste different, when it's fresh, when it's your own, it's got that love in it. So
That's right. One of the things that is really important to me about that conversation and this segue to a phenomenal family, friends, and of everyone here. And also, just a great family. One of the segues is that when Kristi and when others also bring that into the family and they have an opportunity to connect their children and our neighborhood children to food system security, there's this opportunity for active learning, right? So we also turn that into STEM opportunities as well. And education is a critical platform for me. And I shout out my cousin because gardening in schools is important. We do that in Anchorage. We got a lot of hydroponics in our schools. Because resiliency is important to us. But let me bring in a really cool and great family. Yay. Hello, everybody.
Hey.
Because is that like home-based learning and taking advantage of all that learning. EJ, you saw we were talking about growing things, and do you and your family do any of that gardening and growing stuff at home?
Actually, gardening. We're trying it for the first time this summer, so this is very timely. All day today we were out there and trying to clean up our garden beds and getting it ready. And we started our like broccoli and cauliflower and carrots and stuff. So we just started today.
Okay, there you go. Well, we're gonna get our hands dirty, but so thank you for being with us, family.
Yeah.
And let's just go right into this idea of how we as parents, because Jen, we homeschooling parents, everyone is now, and we've talked about this this kind of relationship of the extended classroom and turning opportunities of learning into, really learning and capturing that learning. And you and your family did something phenomenal, and then influenced a very timely and important public conversation around masks. First of all, tell us the genesis of how the idea and the family even got involved in the concept of doing a research project together.
Well, it was pretty simple. So as you know, George, the four of us right here and the baby, we've just been staying home for the past 6 weeks or so. And the only person from our household who's been going out still every day is my wife, Margaret, right? Because she's a midwife. Working for the clinic and the hospital here in town. So she still has to go to work every day, and she's the only one really going to the grocery stores for us, right? And one day she came home from the grocery store, and just based on her observation, she and I were just talking, and she was like, you know what, I still see a lot of people out there with no masks on, and she said people really were not, observing the physical distancing while shopping. She said people were like reaching over her, to grab stuff from the shelf, and things like that. And so we were like, okay, cool. Well, then I don't know, it just clicked in my mind. I'm like, well, that's your experience, but we don't have any data. You know me, I'm a data guy. So I'm like, we don't have any data on that. And so, and then I was like, hey,
so the PhD brain kicked in on the question.
Mommy's watching it upstairs.
Yeah. So so I'm like, let's answer that question. Because even though she's my wife, and I believe her, and I'm with her 100%. I'm like, I can't take your word for it. So
Daddy,
yeah.
you're talking so loud. wait, hold on.
Yeah. So that's what happened. That's what happened.
All right. So there was an observation from your wife, who's an essential worker. First of all, thank you, Margaret, for the work you do in our community and during this time of uncertainty but high need, and the work that you do to bring life into the world and to really work with people at the time is essential. And so thank you for that. And all right, so you got this question.
Yeah.
You got the family, this all smashed into the PhD brain of the doctor, of the PhD doctor in the family. Okay. And then how did you get the kids involved? Because your kids are, first of all, super smart, incredibly brilliant, very active. And so how did you land it with them, and how did they get their hands on this?
Well, first of all, we're his kids, so.
Who are we talking about?
Well, she enjoys taking notes, right? She enjoys like writing down notes. So I knew she was gonna be down collecting data.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had your data collector.
Yeah. But then I got the other two to talk, into it as well, because we all got to go together. I can't just leave them at home. So, but I thought it was gonna be a good experience for them to understand the process of research. And also, to understand the importance of data and basing your opinions on data. Okay. So I had to talk to them a little bit about how fun it would be, because they don't think it's going to be fun. You're like, what's the fun in that, Dad? Right. So I had to convince them that it was going to be fun. I don't know. Did y'all have fun?
All right, Manu. Yeah. What was Alaka? What was your Kalu? What was your first reaction when you heard this scientific? Were you totally in on it and wanted to go do it, or were you like, what are we talking about? Were you confused?
Okay. Yeah.
You guys got to answer that question. It's for you.
Yeah, that's for you guys.
Okay.
Oh, it's just okay?
It's okay. I felt good and I felt happy.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was happy we could go to the car, but hoped I wouldn't get sick. And I did.
Yeah.
So you were concerned, and that's cool. Always good to be aware. Safety first. So let's can you all walk us through the experiment?
So you want to talk about where we went, Manu?
We went to Fred Meyer's, Costco, Walmart, and Cars.
All right. We went to local supermarkets: Fred Meyer's, Costco, and Cars.
And what did we do, guys?
And Walmart.
Oh.
Hey, Red.
And Walmart.
We wrote down data on whether people were wearing masks or not.
Okay, so you were looking. We went to observe people to see whether they were wearing masks. Okay, and
What else? What else did we write down?
We also wrote down their gender and
Okay.
we wrote down what their race might be.
Okay.
What their age might be.
Okay. And then you did it, but did you expect to get it published when you first did it, or was it just for fun? Okay.
It was a science project.
Just a science project, but you got credit for school for it.
No.
Okay. So what did you find? I have the graphic, so I'm going to put it on the screen. Can you explain the results?
Let's talk about what we found.
Hold on, let me just get that
older
off.
people were wearing masks than younger people. And
females wore more masks than males.
Okay.
People of color wore masks more
than white people.
And people at Costco wore masks more often than people at Walmart.
Way more.
Hold on.
More. Way more. So so Costco is the number one store with respect to shoppers wearing face masks.
Yeah, and I think Costco really had other plans and other, I guess, policies in place. So they've really taken that seriously.
Well, nationally, they have made sure that their shoppers and their workers are masked up.
Yeah, but we didn't. This was before they announced that. So is that a coincidence? I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe our results had something to do with that.
Or to the point that here in Alaska, we do have a strong kind of culture of this personal responsibility, and maybe they were just practicing that. That's pretty cool. It's interesting results. What was the most startling result for you guys? Like, what did you find surprising? What did you find that was not so surprising?
I was surprised that more females were more masked than males, and I was surprised that I wasn't surprised that the older ones were wearing more masks than the younger ones.
What about the two of you? Were you surprised at anything?
I wasn't surprised that Costco had the most people wearing masks.
Oh yeah.
Why not? Why not, Laka?
Just because they have more people there. And people will more likely want to wear masks because there's more people there.
Because it's a bigger store, so they would maybe practice a little more safety. Very, very insightful. Very insightful. Kalu?
Were you surprised at anything? No. Yeah. He got bored. He got bored collecting data. By the time we got to Costco, he was done.
Did you guys? What was the biggest? What was your biggest learning moment for you guys? What did you learn from the experience? Okay.
I learned that my dad was a researcher.
He didn't even know what my job was.
Yeah. Bringing the family together.
So it was a moment of a huge discovery for this guy.
That's a win. That's totally a win. Yeah, that's the next phase of his awareness, but that is totally cool. Your dad is a scientist.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
What about you, Manu?
Yeah, what about you guys?
I was surprised that Coda didn't know that he was a researcher.
What else did you learn from the experience?
I learned that being in the car too long is
we learned
going to make your car sick.
We learned how researchers collect data.
We learned how to base things on data. We learned how it's boring being in the car for like 2 hours. We learned how it's like to be. We learned about our dad's life.
Mm.
We learned what he does. We learned what he does.
That's right.
All right.
What a EJ. First of all, thank you for sharing in the window with us as we come to the conclusion of this section, and just for the folks who are listening and for our parents, just recognize the opportunity for lifelong learning and the extra classroom experiences, and really the opportunity that in that we also have a chance to have our kids connect deeper to who we are and the work that we do on our day-to-day basis. So if there are positives coming out from this, let us make sure that we are deeply connecting in that family way, and just thinking of the idea of like we learn data and we also learn how it's to be boring and sitting in a car for 2 hours. That's really sweet and really great. And my cousin EJ shouts us out and says, your children are adorable.
My cousin?
Yeah. Most of the time they're okay.
Well,
Daddy, what did you learn?
Oh,
what did you learn, EJ? Yeah, let's do a final thought from you, EJ.
Yeah.
What did you learn?
What did I learn? Well, I learned.
Give it up for my daddy. Oh my God.
Well, you know what? I learned plenty. On a more serious note, the data, as limited as it was, I learned that I think more people really need to take this pandemic more seriously. Especially mask wearing. Right? Mask wearing isn't the only thing that we can do to prevent the spread of this pandemic, but I think mask wearing is symbolic of really of how considerate we should be for the rest of the community, because mask wearing is really more protecting other people than protecting ourselves. And so I think mask wearing is really, I think, a reflection of how much we care about our community, a lot more so than how much we care about ourselves. So so I think we really need to step up our game on that one.
Thank you. I think it really highlights this question around just thinking a little more in a thoughtful way. What is the relationship of the individual to the community and the community to the individual? And I just think that this level of responsibility that we practice here, respect, right? Mask wearing is respect. This just recognizing that we're in this together and seeing the shift over time with that certain caring and that humanity, I think is what's really important. And I hope that people don't or step away from the politicization of it, right? Making it very political and landing in a left-right sort of conversation with respect to just being safe with each other and in our community. And and so I just want to remind people, and your family helps us to remind that we are all in this together, that when our kids have an opportunity to learn from us, let's take advantage of that. But what they learned is insightful with respect to how we care about each other in the larger community. Let's make sure we model the right behavior that we want to see our young people model. And it just comes down to, and thank you, Zephyr, it comes down to respect. RESPECT. Family, thank you for being with us. Bye, kids. Lil G says hello. He'll see you guys soon. I'm showing him your dribbling videos to put some pressure on him, so when he gets over to the house, maybe I know you could break his ankles. Okay, but remember, he's a baseball player, and so Little League is starting up soon. We're going to be talking about community sports soon. I know everybody's eager to get back into it. Thank you guys so much for being with us.
All right, have a good evening, everybody.
Wow, I know we're a couple minutes over, everybody, but what a phenomenal conversation or conversations. Yeah. And any thoughts and reflections on what we had and how you're processing this?
Oh, I'm motivated now. My husband and I have been talking about doing the hydroponic thing, doing a little more research. Beans Cafe, I've seen their system. They have lettuce growing out of a beautiful little hydroponic system that they have. And so, yeah, just really motivated and inspired and hoping this summer a lot more families, after having this conversation or hearing it or watching it, that they also get motivated and take that ownership like we've talked about.
That's right. And on a final note, I just want to thank everyone for once again joining in this Tell George Live Connections Town Hall. The point is to keep us connected and sharing reliable information and having our comments with our guests. But I also want to highlight that we are talking about issues in some ways very limited, even as complicated and as much information as we're able to share. The food system question is incredibly complicated, but some things are straightforward. And what is straightforward is now we have an opportunity to reset the conversation here in Anchorage through a lens of preparedness. And I'm proud of the work that I've been a part of with respect to doing that. And I think we could take it to the next level. And I thank all of the folks who have commented on some very great ideas and some suggestions are out there. When we think about development and economic development for what's next, I think we owe it to ourselves to make sure that that conversation is front and present. And I thank all of the organizers in the community who are working on, who are growing and working on advocacy around food security and that issue. Thank you for what you're doing out in our community, and we're going to work together. I also wanted to thank and just recognize that there are diversity of needs and diversity of responsibilities out in the community with respect to our own capacities. And, you know, not everyone has the same ability to make the adjustments with respect to public safety or even food security that others can make. All right. So when we think about the economic questions and food security, and we think of the cost of getting into urban gardening, you know, there's a trade-off, but clearly there's some upfront costs that a lot of folks don't have. So there are economic questions as well that I just want to put on the table. And so it's, you know, we don't want to isolate folks. We want to be aware that there are obstacles. And then also there are health barriers with respect to what people can do to mitigate or to be involved in mask wearing, for example. There are some people who can't wear masks. And just one note on that, you may not, or you probably are not supposed to be wearing the mask when you're driving. I know I read that article. There was a person who like passed out because of lack of oxygen because they were wearing it in their car. So be really careful when you do wear a mask, and also be respectful for the diversity of reasons that people are making the choices that they make. Yeah. But I also, that relies that I have confidence that people who cannot mask up are making that choice because they have a reason. And so that goes to all of us being in this together, knowing that it's the connections that keep us safe, and that when we are responsible for each other and with each other, we can do some remarkable things. And this moment has taught us that we don't really have choices, that we actually are all in this together every single day, whether we realize it or not. Yep. Jen, thank you. I want to thank everyone else. We'll see. We just have one more comment. Thank you, Cal. And yes, absolutely. It's all about respect, and it's all about trying to do our best, trusting our neighbors, and which is, again, there's no political side to this. And I want to nail that again. There's no political sides, left or right. This is about community, about working together. And that's what my campaign represents. That's what our campaign represents, Jen. And my candidacy, bringing people together to move Anchorage forward from all sides, all viewpoints, and bringing us together. And I'm confident that together we'll be stronger, more prepared, and more prosperous than ever before. Peace, everybody. One Anchorage, all points Anchorage, and we'll see you on the next Tell George. Till then, thank you.